There's a version of you that knows exactly what you want, and there's a version of you that's anxious all the time, even when nothing's wrong, even when everything seems fine. So you sit between them, not moving, not choosing, just narrating the war inside your head. Because here's what no one sees. You're not procrastinating. You're negotiating between the impulse to be free and the fear of what that freedom might cost you. In this episode, we'll explore what it really means to live with constant anxiety, not just the panic, but the paralysis, not just the fear of failing, but the terror of finally being seen. Because anxiety doesn't just slow you down, it replaces your real self with a decoy version who's always calculating the safest path. You wake up with ideas, energy, a tiny spark, and 5 minutes later, a quiet voice inside you says, "Don't be ridiculous." You feel an urge to speak, to post, to start something bold, and your brain responds with a detailed risk assessment. What if it's too much? What if it's not enough? What if people notice? So instead of doing, you plan. Instead of expressing, you edit. Instead of resting, you rehearse tomorrow's conversations over and over until your present moment is nothing but a waiting room for a future that never arrives. And no one sees this happening. They just think you're quiet, or lazy, or hard to reach. But inside, you're in constant motion, just not the kind that leads anywhere visible. It's like living in a glass maze. You keep turning corners that feel like progress, but somehow you always end up in the same place, still thinking, still worrying, still wondering why everything takes so much effort. And somewhere deep down, you start to believe maybe this is just who you are. But what if it's not? What if this is just the side effect of fighting battles no one else can hear? Here's the trap. The more time you spend in your head trying to get life right, the less of it you actually live. And your brain thinks it's helping. It thinks it's keeping you safe by simulating every outcome, predicting every judgment, preventing every possible embarrassment. But neurologically, it's running your threat detection system on a loop, like a smoke alarm that goes off every time you make toast. You're not being careful. You're being hijacked. When your mind fixates on what might go wrong, it suppresses the part of your brain responsible for presence. That's the prefrontal cortex, your command center for decision-making, creativity, emotional regulation. It goes dark when anxiety takes the stage. So you lose your access to the moment. You stop seeing what's actually happening and start reacting to a world made entirely of guesswork. And here's what that costs you. You stop enjoying things, not because they aren't enjoyable, but because you're not there to feel them. You don't hear compliments because you're scanning them for hidden meaning. You don't trust your instincts because every choice becomes a moral dilemma. Even rest doesn't feel restful. It feels like guilt wearing sweatpants. And over time, something strange happens. You start to trust your imagination more than reality. You start to believe your thoughts are facts. You start to live in a world where danger is constant, where people are always watching, where you can't afford a single misstep. But here's the paradox. The more you try to control your life through reflection and rehearsal, the more chaotic it feels. Because you're not grounded, you're not connected, you're not in the room anymore. You're in a parallel reality built out of fear and perfectionism. And the real you, the one who laughs easily, moves freely, speaks without scripting, that version slowly starts to disappear. Not because it's gone, but because it hasn't been invited out in a long, long time. You already know you're overthinking. You already know this isn't how life is supposed to feel, but you keep doing it anyway because your brain has confused anxiety with responsibility, and that's the loop. Step 1. You feel uncertain. Step 2. Your mind starts calculating, scanning the past, simulating the future, preparing for judgment. Step 3. Your body tenses, your breath shortens, and the world feels dangerous. Not because it is, but because you're not in it. And step 4. You interpret all of that discomfort as evidence that something must be wrong. So what do? You go right back to step 1. You analyze harder. You scroll for answers. You prepare more thoroughly. And every time you do, you reinforce the lie. If I just think enough, I'll finally feel safe. But the truth is, you're not searching for clarity. You're searching for permission. Permission to rest, to speak, to want what you want without justifying it through logic. And until you get it, you'll keep holding your breath, waiting for a signal that never comes. Because anxiety tricks you into believing that safety lives in control. But real safety, the kind your nervous system actually responds to, doesn't come from certainty. It comes from connection. And that's what you're missing when you're stuck in your head. Not productivity, not confidence, not success. You're missing life. Moments that could have been playful. Conversations that could have been honest. Decisions that could have changed everything if you hadn't paused to second-guess them to death. And it makes sense why you'd do that, because for a long time, being careful kept you safe. But now that same habit is quietly making your world smaller. You're not afraid of failure. You're afraid of living without a script. Here's the part that might break your heart a little. You've been trying to fix yourself for something that was never broken, only overprotected. That anxious part of you? It didn't appear out of nowhere. It was built, over time, by necessity, to protect a younger version of you who had to be hyper-aware just to stay emotionally safe. Maybe you learned early that being liked meant being careful, that speaking up came with consequences, that making mistakes wasn't allowed. Not if you wanted to stay close, stay approved, stay loved. So you adapted. You got good at reading the room, at editing yourself in real time, at anticipating disappointment before it had a chance to arrive. And that worked. For a while. It kept you safe. It kept you accepted. It maybe even made you successful. But now you're still running emergency protocols in a life that no longer requires them. You're still bracing for rejection that's not coming. You're still negotiating your joy like it needs permission. You're still confusing preparation with safety because no one ever told you that your nervous system can unlearn survival mode. So here's the truth you've been needing to hear. You're not stuck because you're weak. You're stuck because your brain got trained to treat every choice like a potential threat. And no one ever taught it what peace feels like. But that doesn't mean peace is unreachable. It just means it's unfamiliar. And the good news is, unfamiliar is something the brain can learn. This isn't a closed loop. It's just an old one. And every loop can be rewired, not through force, but through practice, through presence, through tiny moments of choosing differently. So what do you do now? You don't need a breakthrough. You don't need to force yourself to be better. You just need to build one quiet moment where your body doesn't feel like it has to armor up. That's where it begins, not with fixing, but with interrupting. The next time your thoughts start spiraling, when you're mid-scroll or mid-sentence in your head, arguing with a version of someone who isn't even there, pause. Notice what your hands are touching. Name 3 things you can see. Feel the weight of your body in the chair, not because mindfulness is trendy, but because attention is the first language your nervous system understands. You can't logic your way out of survival mode, but you can show your body that it's safe by letting it feel the present moment, even for 5 seconds. And if that feels too big, here's something even smaller. Try saying this to yourself, out loud or silently. Nothing bad is happening right now. It sounds simple. It is. But sometimes the most powerful shifts come from the smallest permissions. Because when you've lived in anxiety for years, your brain doesn't just expect threat, it prepares for it, constantly. So safety won't feel relaxing at first. It might feel boring, or fake, or suspicious. That's okay. Let it feel weird. Let it feel unfamiliar. New doesn't always feel good. It just feels new. And here's another micro step. Instead of trying to silence the anxious thoughts, try naming them like passing weather. Oh, here comes the forecast of failure. Ah, the familiar storm cloud of self-doubt. Name it, smile at it, let it pass. The goal isn't to be fearless. The goal is to be in contact with your life again, even if it's messy, awkward, or incomplete, because that's what breaks the loop. Not a dramatic transformation, but a dozen tiny moments where you chose presence over protection. So, start small. One breath, one check-in, one gentle reminder that you're already here. And maybe that's enough for today. You don't have to heal overnight. You don't need to become a different person tomorrow. You just need to remember the version of you underneath the anxiety still exists. They're not broken. They're just buried beneath layers of overthinking, fear, and outdated protection strategies. And every small moment of presence you choose helps bring them back into the light. You're not behind. You're not late. You've just been busy surviving in a world that never taught you how to feel safe in your own skin. But you're here now, listening, reflecting. That already means something's shifting. If this video said something you've always felt but never had the words for, leave a comment, even just a sentence. It matters more than you think, because your story might be the one someone else needs to read, to finally feel seen. And if you're ready to keep unwinding the patterns that made you shrink just to stay accepted, stay with us and subscribe. There's more here, more language, more insight, more quiet reminders that you're finally allowing yourself to begin. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.